I think we all assume eventually we're going to get to a place where there are no problems. Or, yeah, the problems don't affect us in the same way. There's always going to be some level of problems. I just think that you're more capable of handling them. They're higher quality problems. You can't really have the pros without the cons.
In the beginning of podcasting, Kevin and I were strong podcasters compared to other beginners. Compared to us now, we would be genuinely terrible. It would be like painstaking to be on the mic with the original Kev or the original Alan. It would be very difficult.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was episode number 1315. Are you making your growth too complicated? Today, for episode number 1316, does a life without problems exist? I remember when we first started this journey, I said, if we could only make, or I guess for me it was, if I could only make $3,000 a month as an entrepreneur, everything would be great. Like, awesome. Then I got there and I was like, well, if I can only make $5,000 a month as an entrepreneur, and that number kept growing and growing, and every time it grew, I thought to myself, eventually we will get to this mythical land where there aren't that many problems. And at Next Level Podcast Solutions, we just crossed the 40 client mark, which was a goal I set a few months ago. So we now produce 40 podcasts, which is great. But every single time we get a new client, it's a new opportunity for a problem. It's a new opportunity for a struggle. It's a new opportunity for feedback. Here's the interesting thing. 40 clients is 40 opportunities for success, but it's also 40 opportunities for quote unquote failure. And it's 40 opportunities for pleasure every time the payment comes in, but it's also 40 opportunities for feedback when something doesn't go the right way. And it's very interesting because sometimes I'm afraid to do these episodes transparently because I know that it can sound like we're being negative, or it can sound like we're suggesting that success isn't possible at the rate or in the specific way you want. But I just think that, I don't know, when people cross a certain level, I think they stop talking about their problems. And it's not because they don't have problems. It's because I don't know if they're afraid to talk about the problems or whatever it may be. Maybe they just don't have the same intention we do. But that really is the goal in this episode, really is, I think we all assume eventually we're going to get to a place where there are no problems. Or, yeah, the problems don't affect us in the same way. There's always going to be some level of problems. I just think that you're more capable of handling them. They're higher quality problems. You can't really have the pros without the cons. But I think there's a lot of people trying to convince you that you can. And again, we don't ever want to be that. I saw this the other day. I told Alan about this. We had an individual named Phil M. Jones on this podcast. And Phil M. Jones is an author and a speaker and a trainer, and he is one of the best speakers we've ever had on. He's a really world-class.
World-class. Yeah.
I saw a clip of
Big
him.
fan.
Yeah, same. I saw a clip of him being interviewed on another show. And on this show, they asked him a question. What are your thoughts on these ads that we see where it says, hey, if you're a speaker, you should be getting paid $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $25,000 for your first speech? And Phil, in this interview, said, I do not believe that people should start from the middle of the pack. I believe that when you're starting something, you have to start from the back, right? If you're going to run a marathon, again, the Boston Marathon, they just ran last week. If you're listening to this, you have to start at the beginning. You don't start in the middle. You start at the beginning. That's the way it is. It's a marathon. It's 26.2 miles. That's how it works. And he basically,
you can't even get in without qualifying.
That's true as well.
That's another, and it's important. That's important
for sure. Yeah, for sure, because you have to actually have people who are going to be able to run the marathon, right? That's part of it. But he was saying that from the perspective of there's a lot of people who want to be on the last lap of the race and they have never raced before. Or they want to get paid to speak when they've never spoken before. It's just not the way it works. And that teaser clip that I saw really, to me, meant you can't really get the pro of being a professional speaker without the con of having to do it for 15 years or whatever it is. And that really is this episode in a nutshell. Again, I don't want this to be a negative episode. I don't want to dissuade you. Is that a word? Dissuade? It is now.
Dissuade, I believe, is a word.
I don't want to dissuade you from being a dream chaser, but I also do not want to make it sound easier than it is, because I think that's a disempowering thing when the rubber meets the road.
I told Kev that this is an episode that I'm going to thoroughly enjoy, because I do think that we tend to, and I understand why that is, I think we tend to glorify and celebrate successes, and I think that we oftentimes overlook the 95% that's behind the scenes that is required to achieve whatever that success is. And so I'll tell this story. I heard it in a book. I'm listening to the book by John C. Maxwell, The 16 Undeniable Laws of Growth, and I know that our listeners have heard a lot about this book because it's awesome. Great book. And so anyways, there's a story in the book, and I'll paraphrase, but John Maxwell was on stage speaking. He's a professional speaker, and he got off stage, and one of the dream chasers came over to him and said, "I want to do what you do." And his response was, "If you want to do what I do, you're going to have to do what I did. Do you also want to do what I did?" And the person was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to need you to go do 12,000 speeches." And the point that John Maxwell was trying to make is that the 5% that you see of him on stage, and that being miraculous, that being magnificent, that being extraordinary, it's the 95% of things he's doing behind the scenes that actually has allowed him to do that. Writing every single day. He jokes about, like, they're like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, what about Christmas?" He's like, "No, every day." And that's the thing, right? Do you want to write every day? Do you want to take notes every day and categorize them? Do you want to write 105 books? And by the way, writing helps you with your speaking. Do you want to review your speeches? Do you want, and again, anything on the professional level is ridiculously difficult. That's been really humbling as an older person. Like when I was younger and I wanted to be a speaker, I didn't understand how bad I was compared to me now. I didn't understand how many reps it was going to take to even be reasonable, never mind good. I mean, honestly, and this is hard to share because it's like, well, you guys have been speaking for years and years and years. I want to hold the duality for a second with the listeners. I've been talking a lot about duality. Kevin and I are strong speakers compared to an average speaker. We're like very, very, very strong. But compared to John Maxwell, we're not that strong. And I think it's important to hold that duality. In the beginning of podcasting, Kevin and I were strong podcasters compared to other beginners. Compared to us now, we would be genuinely terrible. It would be like painstaking to be on the mic with the original Kev or the original Alan. It would be very difficult. So everything is relative, and I want to make sure that everyone understands this. You cannot have the pros without the cons that inherently come with it. You can want them. And Kevin and I have rumbled about this in the past where he's like, no, you can want the pros without the cons. You can't have the pros without the cons. And so a good example would be, Kevin, you're married now. You have more responsibility now. You can't be married and not also take on more responsibility. I mean, you certainly can.
Right, if you want to be a good
partner. If you want to get divorced.
Yeah.
Or if you want to, not be a great partner. So whether it's professional speaking or getting married, I have a dog and a cat. I talk about them often, Tucker and Tariel. And this morning we had a diarrhea incident. So I wake up in the morning, I'm doing my thing. I can hear Tucker barking. And I'm like, that's a weird bark. Something's wrong. That's different. And so anyways, normally I have my nice little morning routine by the fire. It's a really beautiful little thing. Not today. So today I go up and I get in my office and it smells like terrible. So it smells bad. Diarrhea. So I'm like, code diarrhea. And immediately I grab Tucker and he like pooped on my arm a bit. And I bring him down. Emilia's still asleep and I'm bringing him into the tub while I have poop on my arm. And then I'm bringing the crate out of my office. I'm opening the window in my office, but I got to make sure Tariel doesn't jump through the window because we have screens, but she will claw right through that.
Of course.
And so this morning was really, really challenging, and we called the vet and made sure he's okay and all that stuff. And 2 hours this morning, probably like an hour and a half, was slightly derailed, for lack of better phrasing. I bring the crate downstairs, and so Emilia and I's morning was derailed. But Tucker and Tariel are pets, and we have a home and pets. So it comes with responsibilities. So if you want an amazing Tucker and an amazing Tariel, or in your case, dog, cat, bird, whatever animal you have, you also have to also come with all of the cons. So if you see a video of Tucker and Tariel I posted recently, it's so cute. They're playing fetch together. That's awesome. And that is awesome. There's the 5% that's really, really, really incredible. The other 95% sometimes, and maybe not 95%, but is like feeding them, cleaning them, them pooping on my arm, that kind of thing, right? So you can't want the pros without the cons is really the point. And it's true with everything. Being in shape, being in a marriage, owning a home, owning a business, especially. There's a lot of people that really aren't honest about that. So it's really important to understand that social media, I would say social media, Kev, is probably 80% pros and only 20% cons. And I think that we get hoodwinked by that quite often. And my social media, same deal. It's mostly good things. Like, I'm not showing poop on my arm on social media. That's okay. But on this podcast, we want to actually help you in your real life. And I think it's a really important distinction.
I saw a video today. And again, here's the thing. I know we complain about this a lot, but I think we're trying to change this. I think that's part of it. Where I saw a video today it was a reel on Instagram, and it was how I make $10,000. It was either a week. I think it was a week. How I make $10,000 a week with 1 hour of time. And it's like, maybe you do now. Cool. That is possible, right? That is possible now for you. But that's a very dangerous caption. It's like how we record 7 episodes a week. I could do that. It's easy. It's not that hard. I mean, it is. It's a challenge. But it's way easier for us than it is for somebody who just started.
Oh,
it's not a realistic.
It's impossible for someone who just started.
It's not a realistic expectation for most people. Yeah. That level of what that person isn't telling you is, sure, maybe they do make $10,000 a week with 1 hour of their time, but they probably also spend $7,000 a week to make that $10,000 a week because they have to pay other people to do stuff, and they're leaving that out. But again, I understand they're not going to tell the whole truth. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Alan and I have been talking, and you've heard us talk about this at some point in the next 65 years, depending on when Alan allows me, I'm going to get a new car. And this is going to be a more expensive car than I've purchased in the past. Awesome. Cool. We don't have to get into details about that. Here's the interesting thing. When you buy an expensive car, you know what else is more expensive? Everything else. You go get an oil change with a $60,000 car, it's probably going to be a couple $100, right? If you need new brakes, not going to be cheap. It's that interesting thing of, okay, yeah, if you want a bigger home, yeah, your insurance is going to be more, your property taxes are going to be more, you're going to need to pay or do the landscaping yourself, you're going to need to pay or do the plowing and the snow shoveling yourself. Okay, there's always that, but I think it's this interesting thing where unless you've been on the side of success, you don't really know the cons. I think
and you're seeing mostly the pros.
Of course.
So think about a world where when we were kids, let's just use us as examples.
Hey, I wanted to give my experience working with Kevin and the rest of the Next Level University team. It has been such a seamless relationship. He is so easy to work with, Kevin, and he gives you all the information you need, but doesn't overwhelm you. He's also meets you where you're at. So whatever you want to do, he'll make it work. And it's just, there's no stress, there's no drama. And everybody else that I've worked with has been patient with me because I am not technologically savvy. So they've been helpful and patient and just encouraging. And it's just been a fantastic experience. I highly, highly recommend working with them.
So everyone listening or watching, think about you as a kid and you saw someone roll up in a really nice car or whatever it is, big home, insert dream here, right? You're only seeing the pro in that moment. You're not seeing the con. And so in a way, it's always going to be off. It always is going to be off because you're not seeing the 20. I was on the phone earlier with a listener, actually, and she was talking about all these things. She wants to be a motivational speaker, and she talked about Les Brown. She talked about Brene Brown. She talked about all these people. I said, one thing that I want to help you with is I'm going to give you what you need, not what you want. I said, if what you wanted was what you needed, you'd already have it. So permission to be extremely truthful with you. She said, yeah, of course, let's rock. That's why I'm here. I was like, okay, perfect. So I said, okay, Brene Brown, I've studied her career. I said, when do you think Brene Brown became Brene Brown? Like a brand, like a big global brand. She said, well, I think the Netflix series, most likely. I said, okay, how old was she when she did that? She's like, I don't know, maybe late 40s. I said, here's the thing. What was she doing before that? And she's like, well, and then I went into it. I ended up just kind of taking the baton and saying, Brene Brown was a researcher. She was a social worker and she was a researcher for decades. And she was also an author. Those are the things that gave her the stage and the credibility to actually be Brene Brown. And so what I asked her, I said, what do you have with your decades prior that give you the opportunity to earn the stage? Brene earned the stage. So yeah, her TED Talk went viral, but she earned the stage. And I'm not saying that you can't have a TED Talk that goes viral without earning the stage. I think it's rare.
Well, there's also a con to that too.
Of course.
Right? She talks about that, how she was, when it went viral, she was like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. So there's a con for that too.
And a lot of people, hated on her and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, she didn't know that was going to go viral. Right. She didn't even think it was good, But, and then on top of that, now all of a sudden, there's the pressure of expectations. Now all of a sudden you're Brene Brown. Now all of a sudden you can't go to the supermarket without people talking to you. Great problem to have. But it's still a problem. And I think all of us could do better looking from this frame, myself included. Look at your goals, look at your dreams. I'm not lessening them. I want you to achieve them. What I would rather you focus on, and this is what I told her on that call, if you can focus on self-discipline and consistency in your thing for years and years and years like Brene did, one day you could be your own unique flavor of Brene Brown. But without that, no way. Brene Brown couldn't be Brene Brown without the decades prior. That's not real. It's not a thing. And so maybe you don't want to get to Brene Brown levels. That's okay. Maybe it's a dream car. Maybe it's a dream home. Maybe it's a home on the beach. Maybe it's a magnificent marriage. Maybe it's kids with a family. There's a lot of cons behind the scenes that a lot of people don't share with every single one of those things. And as a coach, the benefit of being a coach, in my opinion, the biggest benefit has been learning how much the behind the scenes of these seemingly positive things are actually really quite difficult and challenging. And that doesn't mean they're not meaningful. Doesn't mean they're not wonderful. Doesn't mean they're not fulfilling. Doesn't mean they're not worth it. But I'll tell you what, anyone who tells you this dream will be easy, I think is inaccurate. That's what I would say. It's inaccurate.
I would say it's interesting because I was thinking of this. If you can guess with relative accuracy the upsides of something, but you can't guess the downsides of something, that's an interesting place to be. Because imagine if you listen to this podcast, you can probably guess the upside, right? We get to speak into a microphone for a living. Awesome. We get to connect with an amazing community. We get a lot of significance, right? People reach out and say, you guys are awesome. I love the show, whatever it is. Awesome. Those are all, you could probably guess those, but most likely you can't guess the negatives because we don't talk about them that often. That's the interesting thing is like, I don't know. I remember when I was seriously thinking about, I'd like to be a professional baseball player. And again, I never tried hard enough to actually make it. That's on me. But I remember having this conversation with somebody. I said, I don't want to spend 6 months out of the year on the road. I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible.
It does sound terrible.
Yeah, living in a plane or living in a bus or I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. That's a huge con, but nobody talks about that. Now, again, people in the NFL are making $50 million a year. That's a lot of money. I understand. That's a giant pro.
And by the way, the $50 million a year, that's the very high end.
Yes.
They're not making 50 a year,
not everybody.
Typically.
Yeah, not everybody. But now...
And even that is... See, even that's part of it. How many? What's the average NFL annual contract? I bet you it's way lower than that.
Yeah, it's way lower than that. But again, it's still life-changing money. But
it's human nature to look to the top,
of course,
and say that must be nice.
Yeah,
without
I can imagine. That must be nice. $1 million a week, pretty good. But that person, whoever that person is, they spend a ton of time on the road. Every meal is probably measured. They exercise every single day. They spend time away from their family. They're quite literally breaking their bodies down to the point where they can never be replaced or fixed. Just
potentially damaging their brain.
Definitely. I wouldn't even say potentially. I would say definitely.
Yep.
I don't know. There are certain sports where you have to understand you're most likely not going to come out the same as you went in, unfortunately. And I think football is probably NBA, maybe not. But again, we're off on a tangent. That's just it in a nutshell. It's very easy to say I would like to have a life that brings me this and this and this, but there is a song, I believe it is P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, he may have been called at the time. It's called More Money. It's called Mo Money, More Problems. And for a long time I was like, that ain't real. That ain't real. It's real. It is. it is. Not necessarily more money, more problems. It's more success, more resistance. It's more opportunity for pain. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, and I'm not saying it should stop you from wanting the size of the goals you want. But if you're not aware of the downside that comes with the upside, and if you knew the downside sooner, you'd make a different decision. That's the goal of this episode. That's it in a nutshell.
Well said.
Thank you.
Where do I want to make sure we go with this to wrap this up? I wrote this down. What are your problems, and are they the right ones to solve? That's not where I want to go. Does a life without problems exist? I wrote this down. No. The problems just shift. No, that's it. No, the problems just shift.
Yeah.
So Kevin and I got a new laptop. Super pumped. $2,000 laptop. Awesome. It's $1,800 or whatever. It's the best machine. I'm a nerd. I was building computers as a kid. I am obsessed with this laptop. This is the best machine I've ever had. Oh my goodness. I have 16 gigabytes of RAM. I mean,
nobody knows
you don't
what that
even
means.
need that. Alessandro's like, you only open one tab at a time. Why do you need 16 gigs of RAM? Because I want it, right? Productivity machine. The ultimate. Kevin wants the ultimate driving machine, a BMW. Mm-hmm. I want the ultimate productivity machine.
Alan got his first.
What'd you say?
I said Alan got his first.
Yeah, well, mine's slightly less money than yours. But years ago, I needed a new laptop, and I bought a $600 one because that made sense at the time, given the amount of revenue we were creating within our business. It didn't make sense before to buy a $2,000 laptop. But here's the thing. Now that I have it, I'm going to have a bunch of problems I didn't have before. I have to redo Windows 11. I got to set it up right. I guarantee you there's going to be things that we do on this show. You're going to notice probably in the recordings, honestly. Me using a new laptop, I have to relearn how to use this thing. I have to re-download WhatsApp. I have to make sure all the updates are proper. I bet you there's a bunch of stuff about Windows 11 that I didn't know. So at the end of the day, the problems in your life are always going to be there. They're just going to be different problems. So now I have a new success. Awesome. Now I can get a laptop. No problem. We can afford it. Great. But we also have more pressure. We have, to Kevin's point, more clients to make sure that we're taking their feedback and getting better. We also have to work harder and smarter forever. We have to work harder and smarter forever. So the very last thing I would say is this. More success actually brings more responsibility. Spiritually, it brings more responsibility because now you're a leader. People look up to you. There's more responsibility. And when we were kids, all of us listening or watching, we didn't have a lot of responsibility, but we also didn't have a lot of success either. And I think that that's really the through line for me is just more success doesn't eliminate problems. It actually increases the level of responsibility and usually makes even more challenging problems come. And that's the truth.
If one of your problems, this is going to be a nice segue. If one of your problems involves money, our next meetup on May 4th, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the 3 most valuable things you never learned about money. So that is what a lot of us are after, right? More money equals more freedom, it equals more time, more opportunity, whatever it may be. Yes, I did reference a song, More Money, More Problems, but again, a lot of those problems are more aligned problems. So join us for that, May 4th, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is completely private. It's totally behind the scenes. You can be yourself. You can ask questions. You can be vulnerable. But at the end of the day, it's a good opportunity to see Alan and I teach more behind the scenes.
I was on the phone with a new client, and she said, I know this is going to sound crazy. And I stopped her. I said, no. Wait. I know what you're going to do. You've been made to feel bad for your goals. I know it. I know it when I see it. And I said, look at my desktop background. I zoomed, shared screen. And in my desktop background, it says the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. I said, no more of that. No more of I know my goals sound crazy. No, they don't. No, they don't. If that resonated with you, peak performance coaching is for you. I call these the too muchers. Some of you out there are too much for other people. You have too big of goals. You have too much productivity. You have too much inside you. You want to be more. You want to have more. You want to give more. You want to become more. You want to maximize your potential. Some of you out there are around people who get insecure by your greatness. If that resonates with you, I promise you your coaching is for my coaching is for you. And I'm going to help dial up everything that's great about you. And I'm going to help you with the problems that come with that, which I'm experiencing as well. Kevin is experiencing many of them as well for the first time. So peak performance coaching, I'm going to help you achieve your goals faster and dial up everything that's great about you. If that resonated, please reach out. That's it.
Next Level Nation tomorrow for episode number 1317, 4 words you must understand when it comes to your goals. Alan brought that episode, so that will be a very, very good one, and I will probably be funny because I'm usually very funny and joking in the episodes that I didn't come up with, so make sure you tune in to see if I'm funny or not. As always, we love you, appreciate you, grateful for each and every one of you, and at NLU, we do not have fans, we have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Mo money, mo problems. Next Level Nation.